July 18th. What's so special about that day? Well, believe it or not, it's National Insurance Nerd Day. And to answer your question, yes, apparently that is a real thing. The concept is interesting. To celebrate a level of knowledge in an industry that matters so much. So I Googled it. And what I found then was a lot of pictures of people dressed up in your stereotypical nerd attire, right? The dark rimmed glasses, the slicked over hair, the short sleeve, white button down collared shirts. And it was sort of disappointing because when I think of an insurance nerd here at Cottingham Butler, that's the furthest thing from my mind. And it's the furthest thing from most people's minds. So I thought I would sit down with 3 of the nerdiest people I know here and ask them what it meant to be an insurance nerd. My name is Brian Davis, and this is Better Every Day.
We have a culture of being the best. That's ingrained in us.
I think about the fact that that starts with our employees.
What we mean is we expect all of our employees to become better at what they do every day.
People that challenge the status quo.
No growth happens when you're in your comfort zone.
Today means meeting your full potential.
It really is what being better every day is all about.
I'm Jared Sigwarth. I'm a vice president in risk management.
I'm Krista Sigman. I'm an assistant vice president in benefits.
I'm Justin Wenzelman, vice president in marketing and transportation.
So let's get started. And I just want to throw out the question, if it's not about the thick rimmed glasses or combed over slicked hair, what does it actually mean to be an insurance nerd?
We've got a bunch of people that set the example of what it means to be an insurance nerd, if that's what you want to call it, that, wants to be smarter than the competition, wants to, truly understand what we're telling our clients and trying to find new ways to, deliver better results for them. So trying to find that, couple of words that you can change in a policy that completely changes what it means or how it's interpreted in the instance of a claim.
I can distinctly remember numerous times where we're digging into policies, preparing for an RMA or a prospect presentation, and finding something in the policies that we know that's wrong, that we're going to make a finding, and standing up and fist pumping somebody next to us. And if somebody were to walk over, they'd be like, hey, did somebody just score? Did the Cubs win? What happened? It's like, no, we found an insurance finding, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, they've got bad provision. Awesome, we're going to win.
And we're going to win because of this. And somebody who isn't into what we do might look at us like we're unhinged a little bit. And here we are fist pumping, finding something that actually matters to a prospect.
Because I think that's what people sometimes miss, is that when it comes to the contractual part, everything does matter. You know that when bad things happen to people, the way you did your job, the way you analyze the contract, the provisions you put in will impact if a claim is paid, how its claim is paid, and it can be really significant.
I see that you guys hesitate on using the term insurance nerd. Are there other ways that people refer to someone with a ton of knowledge in insurance?
I distinctly remember getting introduced by David Becker as the chief geek officer. I don't think that's what you were going for. But it lightened up the mood, and everybody like, hey, what does that mean? And I think it was David just paused and said, when we want to get it right, when you have a key question, when you need somebody who's going to go make certain that it's done right, Jared's the guy that you come look up.
I think that I've been introduced by David as well, and others, in a manner that I know that it was meant to be a very high compliment. And then you kind of laughed and say, okay, you never want to invite me to a party, but if you need help in this area, I'm your go-to person.
It may not always be done in the best way. I think it's important to note that you guys are often brought up in client or prospect meetings. Why does being an expert matter so much here at CMB?
Well, I think that, until you show a client or a prospect what we can bring to the table or what our nerds can bring to the table, right? I think that there's a lot of folks out there that are accepting a mediocre product, right? And I don't think that they actually even realize it, or if it's accepted in the industry, they might not even know what's available out there.
I think it comes to the premise of how we approach our clients. I think there's some people out in the industry who are out trying to sell people products, and we are the opposite. We are out with our clients trying to help them solve problems. That difference in mindset, requires you to really know what you're talking about and be an expert in what you're talking about. And
that's a really good point to make. It matters because being a professional means you really need to know your stuff. On that note, can one of you give me a specific example of when it really mattered for one of our clients?
I've got one that's off the top of my head. We were with a prospect that, as we were talking through their cargo form, they were talking about how much it's cost them out of pocket for their drivers not filling the reefer units or not setting it at the correct temperature. And he was complaining about how all these claims get denied and everything like that. And off the top of our head, we could say, hey, we've got 5 different carriers that will cover that for you. He had never even heard of that. It didn't even occur to him that he could buy coverage for that. And it's really, it was deleting one sentence out of the policy. And again, we've got multiple carriers that will do that for us if you just ask and talk through what they're doing and why it's important to them. And that was just a huge light bulb for them, right? I mean, they had never even thought about that, never even heard about that. And there's countless examples that, just those different things where, something changes, can completely change a meeting when you're having a conversation like that.
So when it's one sentence to you, what does it mean in dollars to them?
I mean, that client was paying, over $50,000 a year in those uncovered claims, right? So, Jared, I think you've got a great example around flood insurance on this topic.
Yeah, I can think of a bunch of just quick moments where I think what we found and then fixed, why it mattered. Just in reference to flood scenario, we had a client that came to us in October, and the following spring were the floods in Cedar Rapids. I forget what year that was. And we did an assessment kind of after the loss, and they got well over $3 million in payments, and they would have gotten like a couple of $100,000 under their prior program as it was structured. Oh, by the way, what we built for them was more competitive and cost less than what they had been paying. That was a big deal. We've brought on board a number of food-related accounts that didn't buy product recall. We put it in front of them, talked to them about their exposures. We've had at least $3 million+ losses for insureds that prior to coming to CMB did not buy. They came to CMB, they purchased, and then they had product recall that was there to pay those claims.
Krista, how about on the benefits side?
I mostly geek out with life and disability insurance. With disability insurance and that contracts, every word matters, and sometimes even the punctuation matters. Luckily, we don't have a lot of disability claims. They're small, but there was one with a client that we BO'd several years ago, and they had an owner out on claim for a period of time, and then the carrier closed the claim. They did a financial review and said the owner didn't meet the definition of disability anymore because of his income. So the sales rep on the case called and asked me to get involved with the carrier on the claim process, and we did, and had all of their claim manager, the senior claim manager on the phone, the salesperson on the phone. Were walking through the claim process and asking them to explain to me, how did you go from paying the claim to not paying the claim? What did you do? What financial review did you do? And I was listening to what the claim manager said, and I kept listening to them to go through, and I kept circling back on one point, which was technicality and what financial information they requested and when. And I kept going back to that point. And in the end, made it very clear to them, look, you made a mistake in the way you administered this claim. You shouldn't have paid it to begin with, honestly, without requesting the information. You made an assumption. If you had asked the employer at the time for the correct financial information, they would have the right to ask you why you were asking for the information. And if they had known why you were asking for it, they could have made the internal administration needs that they needed to do to buy out that owner to allow him to have that claim paid. And it was going back on that point. They conceded, yes, they didn't do it correctly. That if they had done it correctly, the claim outcome could have been different, and they reversed their claim denial to the tune of over $1.5 million of claim payments to that business owner.
Wow, that's good. That's kind of a perfect transition into my next question for you guys, and that is, how does someone become an insurance nerd? Because as I look around this room, I mean, you guys didn't just take off the cap and gown yesterday, right?
Correct.
That's true.
So
that was very polite.
Yeah. So if you think about the aspirations that we have as a company, how can our knowledge keep up with our growth?
I'll start off with this one. Certainly, if I think about when I started, how much better our training and development program is and how much more organized it is, and the resources and the ability to go listen in on podcasts and see presentations just didn't exist a couple years ago when I started. And so my advice to people is just, work on your development plan with your boss, accelerate it to the best of your ability while you're young. Read everything that comes in front of you. With my new folks, I get them signed up for a bunch of different incoming newsletters, industry updates, and just dig in. And there has to be a relentlessness about it, and also a curiosity about getting better and being an expert and trying to figure out the why something is the way that it is. So I think, the how to do it or how to keep it going, there's a lot of tools and resources. And then just be present. We get people in front of a bunch of transactions, a bunch of meetings. I see some people checking out. Be present, listen, understand, ask questions afterwards. Say, hey, there was a phrase that was used, I didn't quite get that. Everybody I know here and everybody that's got experience around here will always slow down and say, yep, this is what we meant when we said MOD or said some other acronym or abbreviation, for sure.
That's great advice. Where do people fall down?
I think some people fall down because they don't ask for questions or don't ask for help, or they're afraid to ask for help. I don't know why, but just to know that I know I'm available to anybody on our team, anybody from risk or transportation who calls me. I will answer anybody's question anytime. I'll get on a client call or client meeting anytime. And I'm sure the same is true for Justin and Jared, that we're here and we're available, we're a resource for the team, and never be afraid to ask questions, never be afraid to ask for help. There's so many resources here to help you, and so many people who are insurance geeks or technical geeks in so many areas. And part of being an insurance geek is also you love to teach people.
A lot of times, walking around on the floor, I think that, a lot of folks, when they're got their head down and working or whatever, they want to have their earbuds in and they want to, kind of have their head down and be pounding away at something or whatever. But I think you're missing out on a lot of conversations and a lot of the good stuff that's going on around you. So I think, take as much time as you can to try and soak that up.
Maybe I'm getting old, but the earbuds thing as well. I tell everybody around me, I give them 100% permission to listen to all of my conversations. And we're in pods and in groups without walls and offices and doors, kind of for that reason. And I don't know how many times with our group, because we've just enabled that, somebody will hang up on the phone, 5 of us stand up like a bunch of woodchucks coming out of our holes, and we talk about what just happened. And the learning that goes on in those moments is invaluable. It's irreplaceable. And you can say, oh my God, that wasn't a good outcome, or somebody was getting upset, or it sounded like that was a problem, and walking through what was said and how you work through it. Learning by example and seeing transactions and interactions is a great way to do it. So,
and you don't have to rely on just the designated insurance geeks to learn things, because there's a lot of people who may not have earned the designation yet who know things. And like Jay was talking about, just seeing the synergy of the team and working together, and the same thing in benefits. You can, at any time, on any of the floors of the account managers or specialists, look out and see groups of people huddled together talking about something, or 3 or 4 people looking over somebody's shoulder, looking at what's on their computer screen, or looking at their analysis and talking about it and sharing ideas back and forth. And that's the absolute best way you're going to learn, is by listening to those around you, because you can't repeat every transaction, but when you multiply it by all the transactions going around you, there's a lot of knowledge just floating in the air.
That's good. Now let's shift a little bit, because what I'm anxious to hear is some of that nerdiness bleeding through in other parts of your lives. I was talking to John Link recently, and he gave me this example of he was at his daughter's college visit, and he raised his hand and asked them what the water pressure was in the dorm rooms for the sprinkler system. It's hard to hide the nerd, right? So do you have some stories that you'd like to share on times when maybe you couldn't quite hide your geekiness in terms of insurance nerds?
I'm sure there's a lot of them, but one that just happened. Our 18-year-old got his first apartment and had to look at a lease and all this stuff. And I think his eyes kind of glossed over when Kelly and I were kind of talking to him about, hey, what happens if this happens? And have you guys talked about this? And, what happens when the guy comes over and kicks a hole in your wall? Who's responsible for that? And what, and just all kinds of different, crazy claim scenarios that aren't going to happen in his townhouse. But, all the types of things that we said, hey, have you even thought about this? And he's just, didn't want to hear any of it. Yeah. Like, he's like, can I sign it or not? Basically is what he wanted to know. Or our minds just racing, like, hey,
what's everything that could possibly go wrong in this scenario?
Exactly. Yeah. And hey, we really don't like how they worded this. You should probably, go ask them to change this. And, you guys talked about doing DirecTV, and this is what it says about DirecTV. And it's like, just stuff that, most normal people wouldn't want to talk about at the dinner table, but happens a few nights a week at our house. So
Yeah, that poor kid. Did he ever get an apartment?
yeah, he did. Yeah, he just moved in yesterday.
Okay.
So.
I have two thoughts. I think all of our spouses or significant others or children are sick of us pointing out as we drive by a truck that we insure.
Yes, that one
Or drive
and
by
that one.
a manufacturing location. Hey, we insure Flex Deal or whatever it is. My wife just rolls her eyes at me. I remember specifically on the construction side, I built a house 13 years ago, and good builder and all that stuff. But literally, I have kind of my pre-construction meeting. We're talking about where we're going to put, outlets and door switches, and then I said, okay, we got to talk about some insurance stuff, and so I asked for additional insured waiver of subrogation. I wanted to see evidence of work comp coverage for all of his subcontractors. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And the problem was he wasn't already doing those things at the time. And so I just asked him, you're going to have somebody roof the house. Do you know if they have insurance, and do you know if they have work comp? And he's like, I honestly don't. I said, but what happens when that guy falls off the roof? What do you think is going to happen? So I'm the homeowner, but you're the contractor, so you're in front of me, and so I'm actually helping you. I need a discount on my house, please, because I'm helping you. And it was, this was before the RMA ever existed, right? But I kind of gave him a contractual RMA, and he went out and he said, yeah, I went out and did all these things. I got him, nobody pushed back, and I'm in a better spot. But that was a fun example.
Yeah. So good example, but I'm also starting to see why people maybe wouldn't invite you guys to parties.
Yeah.
So, too.
Well,
is there any times when you guys had to bite your lip? Like when you see things or you're out, but you just sit there and you're like, I'll let it go.
Personally, I'd like to party with everybody in this room. And I think we are good times. I think of every time you do something fun, right? Zipline or this or that, and you have to sign this waiver. And I am one of the people that will slow down and read it. I never like what it says, and I always sign it.
But you sign it anyway.
Anyway, that's one of those scenarios that you described.
My daughter always gets upset when we watch a movie or a TV show, and there's some subplot that has to do with a life insurance claim or something. I'm like, that doesn't work that way. It's not going to happen that way. That's not the way the state would work.
That's like a doctor.
She's like, Mom, like a doctor. She's like, Mom, it's just a movie. Just stop. But it makes you crazy because the entire premise of the entire whatever is, I've just lost it. I can't watch it anymore.
While everyone else is emotionally distraught, Chris is over there saying,
like, it wouldn't work this way. It's not how a claim would work at all. They would investigate that. And to kind of this thing about the party, it's one of those things where you go to parties or you go to dinner with friends and they're talking about interesting things that happened at work and this and that. And you kind of sit back and you're like, I can't share a story about something that happened at work necessarily because it's either way too complicated to try to explain in 5 minutes, or it's something you can't tell other people about because it's private or it's confidential or there's something about it. And so you just kind of smile and nod and you can't sort of geek out or share that fun stuff that happens at work with people outside of work.
Right. I kind of think of you guys as like Clark Kent in a way, right? So while everyone's sitting around talking about how they had to wait in line for their coffee that morning and he's had to stop a speeding train and he says nothing about it. He just goes on with his life as a superhero.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Yes, we appreciate
better than
superhero.
insurance nerd.
Yeah.
Maybe let's end with that. Let's do a new term. And I'd like to go with insurance heroes because it's impressive. What you and the other insurance heroes do at CMB for our clients, our people, and the company is big. And our whole approach and model to the business and how we serve our clients wouldn't be possible without all of our insurance heroes. So I just want to say thank you to the three of you and everyone else who's listening in on this podcast for your commitment to being better. Thank you for listening to Better Every Day.